think 75% of it emanates from our own effort, perhaps 25% from others, in the sense of circumstances presenting an opportunity to create, to build, and to effectuate a lasting legacy. But most of it is personal endeavor, most of it is personal motivation, and most of it is energy and some kind of mental quality which connotes a desire to accomplish one goal or more than one goal. Legacy results often, to reiterate, from circumstances which confront people. And legacy is primarily based upon success or failure, primarily. Sometimes legacy can occur even absent 100% success. But legacy also involves style, and style in turn translates from steadiness. Steadiness is a style not often celebrated, but it's a virtue which I think is attached to those who leave a legacy that endures beyond their own life.
We make our own legacies by our set of values as we execute our daily routines and lives. But I think a lot of legacy is actually created by others. Certainly in terms of perceptions and things like that, especially today with the media being so instantaneous. Perception, as Einstein said, is reality. So he said facts are facts, but perception is reality. And I think in that sense, a lot of what happens is actually created by what's left behind as information. I mean, if we think back on Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin or any of the founding fathers, their reality of life was very complex, and we're left with whatever the media has presented to us about what their lives were about. So I think there's a lot of external factors in legacy in that context, but ultimately I think it comes down to just how someone experiences their core values in life. And I think it's possible for an individual to leave a legacy because a lot of the changes we see in the world, which are the moments that we focus on when we talk about history, we focus on those moments of change and when something happened and why it happened. And a lot of the time, an individual can have a significant role in that transformation. On the other hand, I know that Mikhail Gorbachev, when asked why and how he was able to create perestroika, answered that it took 5% of the thinking population of Russia the former USSR, to affect the revolution. And so it does take more than one person. I think perestroika is seen as a legacy of Gorbachev's, but he'd be the first to say that it was actually 5% of the thinking population of the USSR that affected the change.
It's probably a combination of that. And because it is how others have seen us that makes the legacy. No matter what we have done, it is how other people have responded to it.
We're involved, or I'm involved, or individuals are involved with the creating of their own legacies because we have agency as individuals. But I think as soon or very shortly after we leave the womb, that agency is socially infected and infused. We begin to remember faces. We begin to make connections between things we see in the world. And those things, like it or not, yeah, we still have our agency, but it's that worldly context that quickly begins to configure us as individuals. Building, not just legacies, but building history is fundamentally social. And I think that our agency compels us to seek out certain things. But the more we're exposed in a social context, the more we'll seek out. If you want to derive something from a legacy, you must be forced to dig into the social relationships that are the foundation of any legacy. That's the only way you can derive something out of it. And you must be attentive and attuned to the way in which the relationships that are, I think, fundamental to all legacies animate the legacy.
Sometimes a legacy can be a convergence of a person and a time. In other words, Rosa Parks is such a convergence. And she had just zero interest in leaving a legacy or doing something that was seminal or important. But the story about Rosa Parks that we hear, and the real story is more interesting, because the story is that she got on the bus to go home on December 5th or whatever it was, 1955, and it was a rainy, cold night, and she sat in the Negro section of the bus, actually. But when the white section was full, the rule was that the next seats became white, and the person sat in the seats across the aisle from her, and the protocol was that then she had to get up and vacate that row as well. And she did not do that. So it's not like she didn't give up her seat for a white man. The white man actually sat in the aisle across from her. So then the story is that she was tired, but actually she wasn't tired. She was tired of injustice. Her tiredness was a deeper one. But she had been trained all that summer in nonviolent resistance. And there was a couple in Montgomery that had sent her to Tennessee to be trained in nonviolent resistance following Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 and the implementation of desegregation in the nation's schools. So she was trained in Gandhian methods of nonviolent resistance. Well, who are these people who sent Rosa Parks to Tennessee? And where was she trained? And where did they get their training? And how were they connected to Gandhi? So again, when we look at the deserved heroes and heroines of the past, we also have to look at who are the people who created the conditions or the context or the training or the understandings or the influences or the inspiration for these people to act. And they're generally unknown. So when you look at a legacy of one person, a great legacy, a legacy that the world, esteems and admires, it will lead to many people, not just to one. It's the legacy of the we, not the me.
I believe it's driven by circumstances and others. Every now and then, I do get some of my close friends or some family members saying that I did something wonderful by working in the exile community. And I question that because I never felt that I was doing that because it was special. And I tell them, I really can't take too much credit for that because I was sort of pushed into that situation. And also because I was sort of wired that way. I respond to the environment around me immediately. I get sucked in, or I'm attracted to something that's happening right around. And so I just did that as a natural thing. I think circumstances and others define you more often than what do you think you were supposed to be defining yourself.
If I look at myself, I have a sense that what I have been able to do for me is to be aware of when to say yes to a new path and not to resist because an idea is new and untried. And that has paved the way for me to find myself in a place where the work I have done or I am doing is really effective. Although I didn't think about it in advance and create it. It almost happened to me. But that path has been a very effective one and, in a way, powerful. I certainly have never sat thinking now, what legacy am I going to leave for others, or what do I need to do to leave an important legacy? I've never thought of it. I've always worked in areas that have been exciting to me. When I did medical research, I could have said, well, this research that I did helps to set a patient down the road to live longer or to do something different. But I've never thought about leaving a legacy. I'm not sure how many people actually do that. Maybe my sense is the more common one, perhaps, that you do what appears to you on your path in life, and the result speaks for itself.
We are the sole authors of our legacy if we understand by legacy, let me repeat, the function of a bridge, the function of connection. If you go for legacy as which of my ideas Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so are recognized, then you are in a different domain in which your own contribution and the contribution of others start getting mixed, and it can be very difficult, and at times those who are obsessed with recognition, which is not the same thing with legacy, might think, I'm not recognized because others don't do it, and so forth. That's the best I can speculate about this kind of obsession, but we are solely the authors, the originators of our legacy.
I think it's about half and half. I think a great deal of the legacy that I have made and will leave has happened because of the immense kind of privilege of my life, of the rich experience I had with my parents, the schools, the people who poured all of this kind of richness in me. And I'm very aware of the fact that there are many people in the world who don't have the material blessings or the opportunities to develop themselves, who therefore can leave a much more limited legacy than they could if they were more privileged. This morning I heard Barack Obama in this very crucial speech that he gave. And he said in that, you know, we have to face the fact that we have a legacy of racism in this country. And that you can't just say, well, here, black Americans have a higher crime rate. You have to go back and you have to see the kind of legacy of prejudice and of limitation and of repression that they lived under generation after generation. And just because conditions have gotten a little bit better in the last decade, it doesn't mean that negative legacy doesn't affect us. Well, I think in that sense, I've lived with a positive legacy from this culture. You know, I've been one of the best people, you know, white, Presbyterian, educated, tall, male. All those things accrue to the kind of power base with which you start to create your own legacy.
I think we have a great deal to do with our own legacy, but I think that a lot of it also has to do with what others believe of us or what others think of us or how they perceive us. The problem is, I think, that sometimes people have too elevated a sense, too iconic a sense of individuals. And so other people can make you into a much greater icon. It certainly happens to movie stars, as they've explained to me in some of the interviews I've done with movie stars, with athletes, with people who are particularly a part of that kind of worship almost, or idolization. But I think it has to do with the sort of synchronicity or the intersection, of both the person who is making decisions about what to do or not to do, how they're creating their life, how they're fashioning their life, sculpting their life, and then the way it's perceived. It's like almost a work of art in that sense.
If you lived a life by the best precepts of ahimsa and did no harm and sought to live by truth and non-injury with every being that you came across to the best of your abilities in your life, how those beings in turn will recollect you or speak of you or remember you, in some sense has been shaped by more than just their own definitions of who you are. In some sense, their recollections and their the picture that they have of you has as much been shaped by your own actions and your interactions in the time that you had with them. It is the question of how we live our lives rather than what we seek to leave behind as a legacy that determines how whatever is then created or then crafted as being our legacy is perceived.
I don't think an awful lot about what I'm going to pass on to my grandchildren or to future generations. I think more in terms of how do I want to live my life now? I mean, how am I living my life? How have I improved my life over time? How have I learned more about what I really believe in and what gives meaning to my life right now? I don't mean it selfishly so much as it's satisfying. It's brought me to a point of a certain amount of peace. I actually did a strategic plan for myself, which sounds funny, but I had two goals. One, I wanted to be at peace with myself. And two, not in order of importance, I wanted to make the world a better place. I'm quite interested in how we make our own lives meaningful so that that becomes some sort of possibility for others to think, oh, she had a few clues about the way we can live life happily. Also may make this world a better place.